I met Anne in a night photography class. She sat beside me, a small woman with calm eyes and a secondhand camera whose strap was frayed at the edges. She joked, "I'm terrible at taking photos, but I like watching the world through a frame." I said, "Your eyes take better pictures than your camera ever could." I was 32, freshly divorced for 7 months. She was 28, recently out of a 4-year relationship. We were both tired of promises, of expectations, of silence echoing through empty apartments after 10. On the 5th session, I asked her out for a drink. She said yes too easily, and I recognized that kind of ease. It comes from wanting something simple, not something safe. At the 3rd drink together, she looked straight at me and said, "If you're looking for a relationship, I'm not it." I nodded. "I'm not ready for one anyway." She smiled, tilted her glass. "Then, we're friends." She paused, then added, "Friends with benefits." We both laughed, like two adults signing a contract they hoped they'd never have to enforce. No attachment, no jealousy, no expectations. If one of us started feeling too much, we'd stop. That's how we began, with rules that made sense until feelings decided they didn't. Our arrangement was simple. We worked during the day, and sometimes at night I'd bring her a bag of fruit or beer. She cooked noodles, we'd play music, watch a bad movie, and end up in bed. I never stayed over. She never asked why. She said she hated mornings with awkward breakfasts. I said I hated promises over coffee. We both kept our distance perfectly, until one night, she leaned on my chest and whispered, "Do you ever feel lonely, even when you're holding someone?" I said, "Always." She smiled. "Good, at least we're honest." And she kissed me again. Honesty didn't save us. It just made the fall slower. 3 months later, we went on a short trip to the coast. At dawn, while I was adjusting my camera, she said, "I love that moment before sunrise, when the colors haven't decided what to be yet." I remember thinking, that's me, stuck between the dark and the light, not sure what I wanted to be. But I didn't say it out loud. We'd promised not to talk about feelings. A few weeks later, she texted, "Running late tonight." When she arrived, she was pale. She dropped a pharmacy bag on the table. Inside was a pregnancy test. 2 red lines stared back at me like eyes. "I'm 2 weeks late," she said quietly. "I'll take care of it, don't worry. We agreed, remember?" The word agreed suddenly felt like a blade. I asked, "What do you want?" She laughed bitterly. "I want you to not say responsibility like it's a rescue boat. They always sink anyway." We didn't touch that night. I sat in the chair, she lay in bed. 2 meters apart, but the silence between us could have filled an ocean. She said she'd go to the clinic the next morning. I offered to go with her, she refused. She said she could handle it. I knew she could, but that wasn't the point. That night I typed a dozen messages and deleted them all. The next day she said, 5 weeks pregnant, the heartbeat isn't clear yet. I asked if she'd told anyone. She said, "No, I'm old enough to make my own decisions, but I'm also old enough to be scared." Then she added, "Give me a few days." Those days felt like years. 4 days later, her message arrived. "I'm keeping it." My hands trembled. She followed up, "I'm not forcing you to marry me. I don't want a wedding built out of fear." I started typing things like, "I'll be there for you. We can make this work," but deleted them all. I ended with, "I want to be a father. I don't have to be your husband, but I'll stand beside you." Her reply came minutes later. "Let's learn to stand by each other first. Marriage can wait. It's not glue." Weeks passed. I went with her to the clinic for her 7-week checkup. On the screen was a tiny glowing dot. Life, small and stubborn. The doctor said the heartbeat was faint. She needed rest. After that, we fell into a strange rhythm. I'd drive her to yoga, fix her leaking faucet, cook dinner once a week. She'd let me. We became something between strangers and family, careful, deliberate, tired. And still I couldn't name what we were. At night I had dreams of a wedding I didn't want. A tuxedo hanging next to a white dress. A bride's face that kept changing, sometimes on, sometimes my ex-wife, sometimes no one at all. When my mother called, I finally told her, "I'm going to be a father." She was silent for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then she said, "Then marry her. A child needs a name." I said, "We're just friends." She sighed, "No child is ever just a friend, son." I bought a small ring anyway. I planned to propose at week 12, when things were stable. But that night, I saw a brown notebook on On's table titled Single Mother Plan Draft. It listed expenses, insurance, doctor visits, leave schedules, a full blueprint of independence. I hid the ring back in my pocket, feeling its heat. "Were you about to say something?" she asked. I smiled weakly. "Just remembered I need new pillowcases." She looked at me for a long time, then said softly, "Don't do anything out of fear." Fear of what? Fear of being judged, fear of being alone, fear of failing, fear of not fitting the idea of a good man. I had no defense. If we marry, let it be because love arrived, not because fear did. A child deserves to be a result, not a reason. At week 20, we could hear the heartbeat clearly, quick and fragile, like a sparrow in my palm. When I touched her belly and said, "Hello," she smiled. That night she leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm scared. What if I can't do this?" I said, you can. Both of us can. She asked, promise? I said, half a promise. She laughed. Half is enough. At week 24, I was buried in work. One night I arrived late to find her sitting on the floor, sweating and pale. I rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said mild contractions, stress, exhaustion. She looked at me and whispered, "Are you tired of me?" I shook my head, but my throat burned. That night I emailed my boss asking to transfer projects and take a pay cut. I realized then that fatherhood doesn't start with love, it starts with adjusting your budget. At week 32, my mother came to visit An. They talked over soup and baby names. Then Mom asked, "So what's your plan?" I said, "The baby will have her mother's surname. I'll register as father later. Marriage can wait." Mom nodded after a long pause and said to An, "Don't worry about the paper. Just make sure the child never feels fatherless on or off the record." That night I took out both rings, the old one from my ex-wife and the new one for An. One was a promise that expired, the other a promise that hadn't found the right day yet. I kept them both, quietly. The baby came on a rainy morning. In the delivery room, An gripped my hand. "Don't let go," she said. "I won't," I whispered. When the baby cried, everything else fell away. A girl, 3.1 kilograms, hair thin as mist, fists clenched like she already knew the world would be rough. At the registration desk, the clerk asked, "Father's name?" I hesitated. An said calmly, "Leave it blank." Then turned to me, "You can sign later, when it's for her, not for appearances." I nodded. That evening, I returned and filled in my name quietly. No flowers, no applause, just ink and a shift inside my chest. Now we co-parent. No marriage, no rings, no labels, just a schedule, shared costs, doctor appointments, and small routines. We take turns feeding, watching, laughing, and being exhausted. One night she asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought for a while. I regret using you as a bandage for my loneliness, but I don't regret having her. She smiled. I regret believing a deal could protect me from pain, but I'm grateful too. Some truths don't make life easier, they just make it bearable. When our daughter turned 1, we threw a small picnic. My mom brought flan, An hung paper flags. It was quiet, imperfect, happy. A friend asked, "Why don't you two just get married already?" I laughed. "We're busy raising someone." An added, "We'll marry later, when love catches up with the vaccination schedule." That night I carried my daughter home, saw our reflection in the shop window, a tired man, a small child, and a faint smile. Not the life I planned, but one I could finally stand inside. Maybe someday An and I will fall in love properly, maybe not. But something real already exists. A child who is never a mistake, only a consequence of two people brave enough to face their fear and stay honest. And sometimes honesty is the only thing that gets you from night to morning.